Hello and welcome back to my channel, dear viewers. Today we are going to dive into the deep, the terrifying, and the goosebumpies. So when I was a child, I used to love reading Goosebumps, and I'm pretty sure most people my age have read at least one Goosebumps in their life. The series of Goosebumps by R.L. Stine began to be released in small book form from 1992, and it continued into 1997 with 62 books. And since then has stemmed multiple TV series, movies. It's a whole brand. So this month I decided to go back to my childhood and read some of the original Goosebumps, see how they held up to me as an adult, and also try to understand why I and so many others like me enjoyed them so much as a child. So before we get into the analysis part, I'm going to talk about the 5 books I read to analyze, and I will be breaking them all down to give almost full spoilers. So the 5 books I'm going to be spoiling is Welcome to Dead House, Welcome to Camp Nightmare, Stay Out of the Basement, The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, and finally, Night of the Living Dummy. So these are not only some of the original books, but they are also the ones I particularly remember reading as a child. The first one is actually the first book, and that is Welcome to Dead House. It follows these 2 siblings as they move to this new area. They are left this house by this uncle, and things start to get creepy. And eventually they figure out that the realtor and everyone in the town is dead, and they lure people to the town to kill them and steal their souls so they can remain living. The second one is Welcome to Camp Nightmare, which is the one I remember specifically being my favorite, but now after reading it, I'm not sure why I thought that, because the ending is just horrible. So it follows this boy who goes to this summer camp and his friends start to disappear. There's some weird stuff going on. There's this one house that they're told by the camp counselors they can't go to. As it turns out, his parents are spies, and they created this entire camp to test him to see if he could join them on their missions. I'm not even joking. The third one is Stay Out of the Basement. This follows 2 siblings, again, whose father is this botanist scientist. He's just been fired, and he works down in the basement creating some plants, and they can't figure out what's happening, and he starts to grow leaves out of his hair. Things start weird happening. As it turns out, he morphed a plant cell with his own cell and created a plant version of himself, which then locked him in the basement and became their father for a while. Very, very weird story, and eventually they figure out who's the real father and who's the fake father, because they both look the same. And the next one is The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. This follows, again, this young boy who goes to Egypt with his parents. His parents get called away to work, so he ends up going with his uncle, who's an archaeologist, and his cousin, who's a girl about his age, to investigate this new tunnel that has been found in the pyramids. Of course, there's this rumor of this cursed tomb. As it turns out, this guy who works on the dig is from this crazy Egyptian cult, and he tries to kill them all. But plot twist, their mummies do come alive at the end just randomly. The last one is Night of the Living Dummy. This follows 2 twin girls. Next door, there's this house that is being rebuilt, and there's this massive dumpster from all the junk from that house has been taken out, and they find this dummy inside, and one of the girls gets super excited about it, and she starts talking for it, but then it randomly talks for itself, and then they also find a second dummy. Are they alive? I mean, it turns out that yes, the second one is alive, and Chris, one of the twins, accidentally brings it to life, and it starts trying to kill their dog, but at the end, that one is smushed. But plot twist, at the end, the other one is also alive, so both dummies were alive. So sequel. So those were the 5 books that I read. So now that we got the spoilers out of the way, I wanted to analyze how are they all similar, why did they become so popular, and what are my thoughts in general about them now reading them as an adult. So first of all, similarities that I see between all of them. They usually follow younger children. Usually they're 12, and usually it focuses on friendships or sibling relationships or cousins. The first book, you have siblings. The Curse of the Mummy, you have cousins. With the dummy, you have twins. So they all have either siblings or like Stay Out of the Basement is also siblings. That's something I saw over all the books that I read. Another thing is the idea of adults or parents not believing you. When these weird things start to happen, for example, in the first one, the kids keep telling the parents, yeah, we see like ghosts in our house and things like that. Something weird is going on there. Their parents completely dismiss them. Same thing at Camp Nightmare. He tries to tell the camp counselors that something weird is going on. No one believes him. So this is a common trend, and I think it is speaking to the reason why this series was so popular as well. But we'll get to that in a minute. And it's usually, not always, because of the Curse of the Mummy is obviously set in Egypt, but usually it's set in a small town in America, or just some vague American area. With Camp Nightmare, obviously that is a camp, but with all the other 3 books, it is set in this suburban type neighborhood. It also is usually about going to a new place or having something change at an old place. So for example, in the first one, The Dead House, you have them moving to a new house. At Camp Nightmare, you have him going off to camp. At The Curse of the Mummy, you have him going to Egypt. And in, like, for example, The Dummy, their lives change because they discover this dummy where they already live in an old place. So there's a lot of this, like, new beginnings, changes. With Stay Out of the Basement, you have their father getting fired and being in the basement, and that's what changes. There's also, and this is the one thing that bothered me, I think, as an adult, which didn't bother me as a young child, and that is every single chapter ends with a cliffhanger. I have no problem with cliffhangers in general if they are used sparsely. With these chapters, it feels almost forced, like, oh yeah, we're getting to the end of the chapter, we need to add this random cliffhanger, even if in the first sentence of the next chapter it's resolved and it's fine. And I understand why they are implementing that type of writing style, because kids are more likely to continue reading it if they have a cliffhanger ending and the kids really want to read more. However, it's really annoying to me as an adult saying you're doing this constantly. It says often to me that, yeah, it doesn't matter. None of the cliffhangers matter because half of these were pointless anyway. So when there is a good cliffhanger, it's not as hard-hitting because you've had so many cliffhangers anyway. There's also that common theme of a happy ending, but with a twist. You see this in a lot of horror movies, I feel like, where, yes, they have defeated the bad guy, but then plot twist, he's actually alive. So like in The Dummies, yes, they destroyed that dummy, but like plot twist at the very end, the other dummy is alive too. In like Dead House, they have escaped the ghosts and they're leaving the house, and they see another family coming in to look at the house, and wait, the cycle is still repeating itself. Another thing I noticed in all of these, and most of Goosebumps in general, is they're heavily inspired by other more adult stories. So for example, with the Dummy story, you could say, well, that's inspired by Chucky or like Night of the Living Dolls or things like that. With obviously The Curse of the Mummy, you have the different mummy movies. With Welcome to Dead House, there are so many different stories about like haunted houses. You have The Haunting of Hill House. Same thing with Camp Nightmare. There are quite a few like slasher films that are set at a camp. A lot of these Goosebumps are based or inspired by other things, but then they add their own spin or twist and they make it more for children, so they don't have a lot of violent stuff. Nobody gets killed in any of these books, so it's much more tamed down. So now let's get to my theories of why this series is so popular. And for one, I think because even though it is horror, it deals with real things that a lot of kids at that age, say 12, experience. Friendships, squabbles between siblings, moving to a new place and not really knowing how to fit in. There's so many of the themes that can be brought over to real life. And yes, you can say it's fun horror, and if you like scary stories as a child, this series is perfect for you. But also, I think it's something deeper in all the themes throughout it are things that kids deal with in the real life. Parents and adults not really believing them or taking them seriously. There are things that are scary already that are just made scarier, like going to a summer camp is scary, especially if you've never been to summer camp, you've never been away from your parents that long, and you were going there alone. It also deals with things like claustrophobia, like the Curse of the Mummy. You have the boy getting lost in the tunnels within the pyramids, which is scary to be like surrounded by dirt and this long tunnel and not knowing your way out and getting lost. And these are things that really happen to kids. So while in essence, these are horror stories, they're not exactly accurate. Some of them are supernatural, some of them aren't, but they aren't very realistic. I mean, most of these things would not happen to us in real life, but they do play on themes that are more understandable, that are more relatable to a younger audience. So I'm curious if you've read Goosebumps, what are your thoughts about it? Did you read it as a child? Have you tried reading the same ones as an adult? Has your opinion changed about them? For me, I definitely enjoyed them almost as much as I did as a child because they're very fun and light. They're about 120 to 150 pages. They are very short and quick to read, like I read 2 in one day. They're books that are easily digestible, especially since I am in the middle of midterms this week and it's just been very stressful. So to have something fun and light to read, it's a lot of fun. But I'm curious, what do you think about my analysis? Do you think I'm spot on? Do you think I left something out that might be the reason to why it became so popular? I'm curious to know your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, like, subscribe. I post every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a great spooky season. Bye.